This is not going to be a regular AA meeting. Oh, there we go. Technical difficulties.
Keep going.
All right. This is that's our tripod, a coffee cup. Yeah, very low maintenance traveling. Yeah. So, how many people weren't here last night?
We're not?
You were not here last night. Oh, you really missed it, baby.
I can
We even
attest to
showed
that.
the secret handshake last night. Sorry. Yeah. Next year, maybe. So last night I just I shared my story. My name is Paul. I'm an alcoholic. I got sober March 21st, 1988 in San Francisco. Uninterrupted sobriety. And for me, how I look at what happened now is I was struck sober, and the whole of sobriety was like downloaded in me. And then the next day I was introduced to AA so that sobriety could be extended in time. Yeah, I needed a way of life to allow it to express. So it was in, but it needed a form of expression, and I met AA, which I wasn't looking for either. So that last day was like a regular day at the office. I had spent like 2 years and 10 months ago, I had entered a program. I don't know if it was similar to Milestone. It was mostly convicts and stuff. Called Delancey Street, and in San Francisco, in the world of rehabs, that was the place, the worst place. If you had creds if you had gone to Delancey Street. You know? Oh, you went to Delancey, like a very high level, sort of weird. But, so I graduated from there with flying colors, but see, they didn't have a bridge to daily life. They didn't like AA actually. So when you left, you were on your own, and I was easy pickings because the parasite. You know the cicadas that come here, they suspend for 12 years and they show back up. The parasite is sort of like that. Yeah, it sort of lays in the woods or in the grass, and then when the situation and the conditions correct, it rises again. Yes. So in those 2 years, it was hibernating. I went to college, all this stuff. And they were telling me that my life as that addict, though rather long, was over, and I was going to be sober from this point on. And you know, I had a lot of hope about that. Gone to college there, and then basically as soon as I left, you know, I was left alone with me, the me that I'm not really, because the parasite of alcoholism talks to me as me. Yeah, it talks to me as me. And it started to run a story, which I bought, and it led me to a place, because see, alcoholism can't drink. It needs you to drink, yeah? So it's sort of like there's a lot of parasites in the world, and they've done a lot of studying. Now, alcoholism is like a non-entity parasite. It's not a thing. You can't take an X-ray and see it. It's not like 12 legs and 50 fangs. But it's sort of a mental parasite, yeah? And so, but you can see its effects in people's lives greatly. So that's how you basically know self, is by its effects. Yeah, you know the tree by its fruit, so to speak. You can't know the tree, because it's an activity going on in one's head, yeah? So in some of the typical ones, there's the one I got introduced to early, because I was starting to do talks, so people were sending me all this research about parasites. And the first one I got introduced to was this mushroom. It comes from this, called the cordyceps. It comes from a big family, the cordyceps. And this mushroom has its main drive, which is to reproduce, like everything else here. And its reproduction system was pretty shaky, because it was just spores hanging off the bottom of its little fucking umbrella. And it would hope that like an animal would come by and hit it, or a wind, and hopefully it would be blown into a hospitable place so it could reproduce. But so realizing this incredible defect, it created another strategy, which is it would release the spores, and the spores would land on ants and would burrow into the ant, burrow into it, and then jack into the ant brain and tell the ant where the mushroom wanted to go. So it would actually use the ant for transportation. As soon as it took it to a dark, dank, wet place, it would kill the ant, and then the mushroom would grow right out of the head. Yeah. You think alcoholism is different? Really? And there's this another one, this newest one is called Toxo. That's its little nickname. It's in about 20% of humans, suspended in the brain. Doesn't seem to act out, but then again, it wants to reproduce. But it has an incredible dilemma. It can only reproduce in the stomach of cats, and it finds itself in other mammals. So, I mean, you would think you have a hard time getting a date. Can you imagine that? You can't fucking take an Uber. You can't call a store. You're fucking stuck in another body wanting to get to another body with no legs, no fucking arms, can't make a call. So, basically, again, what it does when it appears in rats and mice, it jacks into the rat or mice head and says, when you see a cat, run right up to that cat. And so in plain daylight, you'll see a rat walk up to 4 cats and basically with a knife and fork and go, come on, eat me. Yeah? So you would think the rat's basic instinct of preservation would override. But no, the parasite overrides the basic instinct of every creature, self-preservation, overrides it like that. Yeah. So then the cat eats it, then the thing fucking gets into the stomach and reproduces, and then comes out the fucking ass, starts doing some more shit. You know what I mean? So now those things, you could see those parasites, but alcoholism to me is quite like that. Yeah. Alcoholism enters the host, which would be us, or enters the car, gets in the car, closes the door, and then it tells the car that it's the car. So when the car tries to get out of the car, you can't get out of the car as a car. You'd have to see it as something other than you to be able to be free from it. Yeah. So it convinces us that it's us. So now we're actually out there trying to meet its agenda. Yeah, we're taking, and if you think you're so unique and different, just look at our community. How many thousands of us have been taken over, and how many of us end up at the three similar parking spaces, institution, jails, and death? Now, you may have come from Hoboken, I may have come from fucking Santa Monica, but we end up at those 3 parking spaces. We're not the driver, we're the vehicle. Yeah? There's this one parasitical movement that's represented as the idea of self, yeah, has manifested in a lot of ways and has defeated us. How does it keep defeating us? Because when it manifests through us, we call it ours. So when it produces a perception that there's a threat when there isn't any, and it reminds you of a previous threat, and you have a resentment, yes, that resentment is a manifestation of self in one's life. It's not our resentment. If you read the book, it says it very clearly. Being convinced that self manifested in various ways is what has defeated us. It doesn't say being convinced that Paul, Mary, Jim, Sue, and all the millions of alcoholic names have defeated Paul, Mary, Jim, Sue. It says self, us. We're us, and then there's self. The idea of being the doer, the thinker, the haver, the loser, yes? The sense of, and the language supports it completely. Because I remember I came here, wasn't here, or was here I think. I hadn't been here in a while. I came back and my hair had grown, yeah? So a guy who knew me came in and says, hey Paul, you're growing your hair. I said, yeah, I'm growing my hair, and I'm doing pretty good. And he was balding. I'm saying, you're not doing that well. And I start telling him, you know, I've joined with some other people, and we get together every Saturday for 3 hours, and we grow our hair together. And it seems to grow better. You know what I mean? And, you know, why don't you come this Saturday? And I have pride about my hair. You know, there's not, but all I did was not cut it. I had no role in growing it. How could you grow your hair? Go on Google and how to grow your hair. There's no fucking you can't grow, you have no ability to grow your hair. Almost everything that's keeping us alive, you have nothing to do with. The only process of the body that's half voluntary is breath. Everything else is totally involuntary, because something new, we shouldn't have any power, because we would have just died the first second. We would have been thinking, oh, I wish I knew what, because you would have forgotten to pump your heart. You know what I mean? So there's there's so much absurdity that we take to be so. So we believe that we're the thinker of the thoughts. I like to see you think a thought. Yeah. Something happens, something goes on, and then there's thoughts that ensue that fit the first thought, but you're not the cause of the thought. You're the seeing of the thought. That's what we are. We're awareness. Yeah. If you want to call spirit is aware or being or consciousness. We are more that than the body. Yeah. But now we're in the position of being identified so much with the body, we're trying to become conscious as the body. It's much better to become conscious of the body and see it as not you. It goes a lot farther. And who's the greatest beneficiary? The body. The body is not built to be the center of the universe. The body is not built to be thought about like 100 million fucking times. Yeah, it isn't. It's way too much. There's so much power in mind to have it focused on this all day, just orbiting around the planet Paul. It's unbelievable, man. You watch it. Look at all the neuroses. Have you just stay with a normal person for 5 minutes? They're flipped out. You watch their hand on the table, they're like this, and their legs are like this, and you look at their eyes, they're fucking, fuck, jeez. You know, if you're passing quickly, you don't notice, but if you actually just pay attention, we're fucking mostly insane. The neuroses are just growing like ivy on a wall. Just fucking off. So what happened? I was regular day at the office. I was trying to stay drunk until I could get high. And I had a dilemma about getting high because I had no money. Yeah? That was a very persistent problem at the end. And my ability to convince others to do what I wanted was going down. I was having a very low batting average of success, so I was super fucking pissed, really. So what happened is I ended up in this trailer park, and with someone I didn't know. It's sort of like I just came to. I had been in like a brownout, I guess. I had just come to, saw this guy for the first time. We were passing a bottle of cheap vodka, and something happened. I looked at him, and then I felt like I could see how he was looking at me, like a bum. And that was the end of it. I haven't drank or used ever since. It was almost like a portal opened up, and information downloaded, and the information was very succinct, very clear, very sudden, and it was like a CNN news flash. No story, it was just, I'm fucked. Now, that has never changed in 30 years. Yeah? I realized completely I am not managerial quality. And I truly believe if in time you wanted to switch anything in the program, I would switch the first step and move the unmanageability actually caused my drinking. Because I try to manage alcoholism, that irritability, restless, and discontent, and my solution to alcoholism was using. So it's because when I came in AA, because it sounded like my unmanageability was caused by my drinking, I had an expectation that things were going to get great as soon as I stopped drinking. And I had a rude awakening, because then it was just fucking naked, raw alcoholism with no way of, like, you know, dimming it down. So I realized, no, it's the real activity of the disease is managing, yeah, trying to control, trying to forecast, trying to dictate, yeah. And in that managing, it always leads me to the point of having to be managed by other people out here. That's what happened in my life. And like I like to say, I was saying it last night, you know, you come into recovery, we're going to get to the steps soon. You come into recovery, one thing, I'm really jacked up on understanding, because when I entered AA, I was going to these meetings, and one night I saw these two people that looked pretty bright, and then they talked about they were at this seminar called Joe and Charlie, and you can still get the tapes on the internet. And then I didn't hear about it for months later, but one night at another meeting, they said, hey, we have an application for the Joe and Charlie seminar in Sacramento. I ran right up to the desk, got it, signed it, sent it. I was going to girlfriend and I, but she didn't come, and I went there. And I'm not 2 levels below a coconut. I thought I understood the book somewhat, but these old dudes explained the book, and there was 600 people who were enthusiastic about being sober. Yeah, they weren't dragged there. Their parents hadn't gotten them there. They were interested in the freedom from the bondage of self. So it was like very contagious. And these guys explained the 4th step, and I had done one, but I missed the spirit of it. And they explained it to me, and I got it. I had an understanding when being, and I went to my motel room, and I did a 4th step, because I finally saw my role in things. I wrote a very, very bland inventory. I didn't see the connection to, I'm pissed at this person, and what did I do? And I'm suddenly lit up, and I saw it. And that's where the relief is. Because everyone tonight in Dover does the first 2 columns of an inventory. They know who they're mad at and why, but all it does is lead to another drink or another use, yeah? AA just takes it a little farther. What was your role in it, yeah? And if you see your role in it, suddenly there's relief when there isn't any relief when you know who's fucking with you and why. There's no relief there. You can get agreement from people. That's where you go to bars and talk, and all your phone bills are so high because you're trying to get everyone to agree, yeah, they're fucked up. In fact, there's no real relief there. But if you see, hey, bro, what did you have to do with it? You know, like I remember I was in this work farm, you know, for one of those little mini vacations. And this guy didn't like me on one of the horses that would walk around. And then when he'd spit on my head one day, and I got a huge resentment. What the fuck? Why did you spit on my head? But then I looked at, hey, you invariably find that you made a decision based on self that puts you in a position to be hurt. That came totally illuminated. I had tried to rob a liquor store, that's why I was at the fucking farm. Yeah? I made a decision based on self. I want to get that money, and then it put me in a position of being hurt. What? Yeah. My whole first year of AA, they were like light posts, the book. Certain statements would just light up, and I would see it. There's one time I had an apartment, it was beautiful. I had an apartment in Haight-Ashbury, my first year of sobriety, perfect place, be sober. And we had so many people sleep on our couch, and it was great. Some of them would send us Christmas cards. Yeah, really cool. So I was there, and my roommate had left. I thought it was a pretty nice room, so I wasn't worried about getting a place, but I couldn't find a place, anyone to move in. And I was afraid that I wasn't going to have enough money to pay the rent. So there's this guy I met who had just come out of a program, Paul, another Paul. I didn't like him, but he's like, hey, you need a room? Yeah, all right. I had to move in. A little bit of suspicion there, but fuck it, you know, the problem's over. Now I don't have to worry. But now Paul has one of his old romances in the program he was in. She comes out and he doesn't have a phone, and she starts calling like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, my phone. Says, is Paul there? And I said, which Paul? Not Paul, no. And I have to go there, and then one night I find all these liquor bottles in that, and the guy and this lady went out, and then I'm like, 3 weeks later, I get a call from him, and it's like from hell. He's in fucking someplace in the East Bay, and I don't get another person to go with me, which was a mistake. I drive there to try to help him, and the doors open, and they're in like a fucking hell in the back. I'd hear him. I go, Paul, are you in there? I'm not going in. No fucking way. Paul. I throw a rope in there. Paul, grab onto the rope, and suddenly comes out. He only has one shoe on. I said, fuck, go back in and get the other shoe. 15 minutes later, comes out. I take him and I bring him to the detox, and I never see him again. And then about 4 months later, I get a call from a lady I don't know, and she says, is this Paul? And I said, Paul who? And he tells the other guy's last name. I said, no. He says, well, do you know where Paul is? I said, no. I just want to tell him that Kathy died, you know. the woman. So all this happened because I made a decision based on fear. All those 4 o'clock morning calls, everything like that, that put me in a position to be fucking inconvenienced, that got me pissed off. Your whole life, it's not your life that's being described by the book, it's alcoholism. A life dominated by alcoholism is well caught in the book. And it's when you start identifying with the description, it leads you to the release, yeah? The first step actually has to be perfect, yeah, or you're going to go back to it, yeah. So the first step is to powerless over alcohol, and your life is unmanageable, or whatever it says. And so first of all, let's look at the powerlessness. Let's look at, and this is just I'm just giving you my take on it, yeah? And I probably would give a different take tomorrow night if I did. It's not written, or I don't have a tablet where I keep it in stone. It's just the view I'm having now, because it's not my view. Do you think I would come to this meeting? All the talks I've ever done, the only reason why they happen is I never showed up. I never showed up. I used to do this workshop in San Francisco on the 4th step, 16 years. Every Monday night, no matter, as long as I was in America, I did this thing, yeah? And that's a lot of Monday nights. You figure 52 by 16 is a lot of Monday nights. And all those Monday nights, sometimes I was waiting. Back then, when I got sober, the AIDS test took 3 weeks to get results. So you got the test, they didn't tell you in 3 weeks, for 3 weeks. So I had to, you know, I was feeling like maybe I have AIDS, you know. I had no money, my fairy princess broke up with me, I had sinus infections, but it didn't matter. As soon as I sat in that chair, something came through. Something came through, and I'm a believer in, you don't have to have it to give it away. If you're willing to give it away, you have it. That's my experience. I do not believe you've got to have it to give it away. If you're willing to be used, you will be used by that power. Yeah? Because I saw it. And what happened is, whatever was bothering me or I was obsessing over, when I was in that room, in this event, I didn't feel any of it. It was as if it never happened. It was totally dismissed. Now, after the meeting, 5 minutes later, some of this shit comes back and this and that. But after years of demonstration, if something could disappear that quickly, it mustn't be real at all. Yeah? It has to have me to seem to be real. And when me gets captured by that higher power, that which seems real to me doesn't seem real to it. Yeah? And you're not a one station. You can pick up a lot of stations. You can pick up a spiritual station just as well as you pick up self-centeredness. But you can pick up the spiritual radio station from self-centeredness. Self-centeredness will scramble the fucking message. You have to lose interest in self, and then you gain interest in that other frequency. Yeah? And this is what AA does. AA, I don't believe you need a spiritual awakening. You are spirit. What happens to me is the obsession or the mental dimension of your life gets diminished by living the steps. Yeah? And then when the mental state diminishes, the spiritual state becomes very, very influential. Yeah? But it can't become influential through the mental state. Yeah? The mental state you lose interest in, and then the spirituality becomes obvious. And it happens with no thought of effort on your part. Yeah? You and I cannot become spiritual because we're spirit. Yeah? We're spirit already. We're trying to become spiritual as a mental body idea. Yeah? The body's never going to become spiritual. It's a body. But if you see you're not the body, what happens is you find out that you're spirit. Yeah? And then suddenly, instead of having the body brain have such a high volume in your head and the higher power very low volume, it goes up. The higher power now has a very loud volume and your yapping has a very low volume. Yeah? And that's the whole difference. And you travel lighter on a consistent basis. And you can't categorize or gauge or weigh lightness. You have to live it. It's a flavor. But I'm telling you, the flavor is fucking sublime, because I could not navigate a day without getting into trouble. I couldn't. the irritability, restlessness, and discontent, the agitation was the imperative. It wanted fucking relief. And as I said last night, the alcoholic of my type is I'm willing to pay any consequence tomorrow not to feel uncomfortable now. And I feel uncomfortable now with untreated alcoholism. Yeah? So, all right, so the first step, powerless over alcohol or drugs, whatever you want to put in there. Now, powerless to me means you're dancing with a gorilla, you're going to stop when the gorilla wants to stop, yeah? So I don't see, in my experience, how I really experienced the idea of AA as a disease was in about my 6-month mark. I was riding motorcycles, and I had this woman on. I was with me and my friend and his girlfriend. We went back to his apartment, and when we were walking up to his apartment, a neighbor came down with paint all over her pants and stuff, and then we just said hello. We went in, he went back to his motorcycle, ran into his neighbor, and he came back and says, "Hey, Paul, my neighbor would like to see you." And I'm thinking he told her I'm a house painter and I'm going to give her some advice. So she walks into the room where we're all sitting, and she goes, "Hi, Paul. Hello, Paul. Do you remember me?" I go, "No." She says, "You owe me $500. What? So, I mean, the men caught me with my pants down, so to speak. But the funny thing is, my reaction wasn't guilt or shame, because I knew I would have done to her, to anybody, unless you could physically stop me. I got the powerlessness. I got it. Yeah? It showed up right when she confronted me. And I ended up giving her that money with checks, and every check I signed said, I told her, the only reason why you're seeing this money is I'm in AA. But I paid her the fine, and then she started asking me for advice on the phone. That's insane. So the idea of powerlessness is if something takes you over, how you're accountable for what happens here through this, but are you really responsible? After you have a drink, if you're an addict or an alcoholic, are you responsible for what's going to happen? Do you have any idea how the circumstances and situations are going to unfold? You're basically taken over and used for transportation, basically, yes? You've allowed the parasite to get its fuel, now it wants to express. And it likes to express with a lot of fucking drama, a lot of shit like that, yeah? And therefore you're used until the body can't take it any longer, and it gives you a little break, and then you fucking wake up and it's on again, yeah? Because it's constantly talking to you as you, and it wants to lead you to its idea of surrender, which is fuck it. It does. It wants you to bring you to fuck it, because at fuck it, you'll do almost anything. So it can happen quickly. Sometimes it works for weeks. You know, they're fucking out to get you. No one's thinking about you at all. But, you know, they know what they're planning. You know, no, they're not. They're in their own little orbit, yeah? But then there's a decision, you know, fuck it, I'm not going to go to work. And then you do get fired. Yeah? And then you go, you see, I was right. You know, it's such a weird thing. And the funny thing is, it keeps reintroducing itself. And every time you catch it, you call it me. Every time you catch it, in its thievery, as soon as you recognize it, you call it me. The alcoholism is disguising itself as you, and it has carte blanche in all your shit up there. It knows all your fucking secrets, and it's going to use them. Yeah. So this idea of powerlessness, I see it in AA, and a lot of people in this room who are sober, they've adopted this spirit of sobriety, which is they feel like something's doing for them what they can't do for themselves, yeah? So there's gratitude. So, you know, you get jobs, all this stuff happens, things work out where you couldn't have figured it ever working out, and you start offering the gratitude or the responsibility to the God or a higher power, yes? Why not apply that before sobriety to the lesser God of alcoholism? So, to me, alcoholism did to me what I would never do to myself. Why am I still believing I did all that shit? I'm not believing I'm doing all this shit in sobriety, but I believe I did all that shit when I was out there. We were taken over by a lesser God, the God of self. And you see it. We get sober, But that mental state still harvests tons of guilt and shame out of those past behaviors. It always relies on that you were a fuck up, that you did this, that you do that, and it creates a cloud in your day. And the cloud is really coming from what's not happening. Yeah? When are you going to be left off the hook? When are you, forgive, forgive, forgive? What about you? You cannot forgive yourself because you truly believe you did it. You don't see the deepness of the powerlessness. You don't. You believe you should have done something else. And that's which is believing that isn't fucking you. It's the parasite. The parasite is using you to convince you that the parasite must continue. You did do that shit. Yeah? If you do the step 9, they should be done. If you do your amends, they should be done. You don't shut the door on the past, nor do you harvest tons of shit from it. I'll throw that in. It's not in the book. You don't shut the door on the past, nor something else. It says another thing. Basically, the past is sort of neutral. It's not like a fucking mining company where you're digging, I mean, how long are you going to be tattooed by your past fucking events? I'm not an addict, nor am I a recovered person. I was neither. I'm just a possibility. The mental state took me over, and I was a perfect fucking addict. Now something else has taken me over, and I'm being put to use to be of service. It's the same tool. It can kill someone or fucking, cut a tree. It's the same thing. We're like that, yes? And I'll tell you, see, I'm better being directed than directing. Yeah? And I've been directed by the parasite, and I've also been directed by the higher power. This is the easier, softer way. And the parasite doesn't give a shit about you. It doesn't. I saw that when I was young. I took 2 hits of LSD, and we were ready to go to a Rod Stewart concert in Madison Square Garden, Fumbling Island. And then my head says, why don't you drop like 5 Tuanols, like these downs? Now, you would think if it was me, it would have self-preservation, but it was like wanting to kill me. I was like, what? Oh yeah, drop 5 or 6 Tuanols, get on the railroad, which we felt we didn't make it anyway to Rod Stewart. But I mean, it's like, what the fuck's talking to me? It sounded like it wanted to kill me. Yeah? Oh yeah, 6 downs with 2 ass. Oh, great. This is a really good cocktail. You have to see it. That thing that's talking to you as you may not be you. It's infected with alcoholism, just like that ant brain was taken over by the mushroom. Just like that little bug dictates what the rat and the mouse is going to do. It's just exactly like that. And the only thing that it respects is a higher power than it. And at this point, you're not. You've been taken over completely. So, all right. So step 2, to me, oh, it fell, yeah?
I got it.
Oh. Step 2 to me is an observational step. Other people have a different idea of it. So actually, step 1 is you reflect on what it was like before you got sober, to come to the conclusion that you're powerless and you're actually not managerial quality. Yeah? Then step 2 is you're now reflecting on what it's like since you started going to AA. So it was obvious to me. I came to AA. I came out, and I sat there, and when people started giving me suggestions, I said, I hope you're right. So they said, you should come back. I said, okay, I hope you're right. Sit in the front, pay attention to the speaker. Okay, I hope you're right. Get a sponsor. Not now. No, I'm not going to do that. I hope you're right. And then I came back. And suddenly, because AA works, the hope turned into belief quickly. Yeah? And then I came to believe after a couple weeks, 8 weeks I hadn't drank or used, I came to believe that a power greater than myself had restored me to sanity concerning the insanity that precedes the first drink. Not all the other insanities, that one insanity that precedes the first drink. I hadn't drank. What more evidence did I need? So I had already come to believe, it says came, so it's an observation, yeah? The coming had already happened. You came to believe, so you finally observed it, and you go, well, I haven't drank in 8 weeks. I haven't done this, I haven't that. So now I believe that something's done for me what I can't do for myself. what does it do? Pivots you right into, okay, the third step. Yeah? So the third step, see, this is a trip. If our life and will was in our control, it would only have been a 3-step program. We would have done the third step, turned our own life over to God, and that would have been it. See, but we're taken over by the parasite. So it's not our life to turn over at the third step. We have to make a decision, yeah, a decision to turn ourselves over to the care of a higher power. We can't deliver the goods because we've been occupied, yeah? So we do the working steps, 4 through 9, to facilitate the entrance of a higher power to diminish the power of the parasite, to sort of like to suspend its influence so that what happens? There's some freedom, a possibility, and then that hopeless state of mind and body is seen as seemingly hopeless. It was appearing to be true to you, and now it's not appearing to be true to you because you're sober. Yeah? You haven't drank, you have this is happening, that's happening. Yes? So now, 4 through 9 is what gives the flesh and blood to the third step. Yeah? If you hear people sing the glories of the third step, I guarantee you they've done 4 through 9. Because if you're on the third step, it's it doesn't have much fuel yet because you're occupied territory, really. So, all right, so the third step is just a simple decision, and then you do the working steps, 4 through 9. Now the fourth step is a basic inventory that we do when we enter AA. It's not if you want to do an in-depth one, the 12 by 12 goes into a lot more questions, yeah? But this basic inventory to get us into the program, and usually when you finally do the first working step, you feel like you belong, you've earned your chair, you know what I mean? There's something it does with the group that you feel like, hey, I finally fucking did something. The first 3 steps are all just, you know, I finally did something. So the fourth step, so this is what gets me. It talks about right at the paragraph on page 64, before you enter into the inventory, it says, being convinced, which means a present tense condition. What do you mean I'm being convinced of what? Step 1 and step 2. I'm being convinced that I am powerless over alcohol and drugs and my life's unmanageable. And I'm also being convinced that a power greater than me can do for me what I can't do for myself. Okay? Now, all right, and the third step is that decision. And now the fourth step, it goes, all right, being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, is what has defeated us. We will now look at its, self's common manifestations. And then the next paragraph is resentment. So when we look at resentments, they're manifestations of self. They're not yours. Yes? Something has taken you over and is expressing itself through you. Yeah? And when it expresses itself, the common ones are fear, resentment, harms done to others in pursuit of what you want. Yeah? What's important to see is they're not yours. They're the manifestation of self. Because you can't see self, but you can see self through the manifestations. So we do an inventory of the manifestations of self so that we recognize that self is what has defeated us. And we see how it defeats us. Yeah? And how it defeats us is we're identified as it. Yeah? If Stanley, let's say here's Stanley and here's Paul. And so Stanley has some manifestations. He's vindictive, jealous, and shit like that. Yes? Suddenly Stanley manifests through Paul, and as it manifests through Paul, Paul calls them my jealousy, my acting out, my vindictiveness. I'm in the act of being identified as Stanley. That's it. That's the whole dilemma. That's the bondage of self. We're in the act of being identified as the parasite. While its manifestations are coming through, we claim them to be ours. And there's a huge difference. My resentment can fucking be milked for 40 years. You'll keep it on life support. It explains your whole fucking life. But a resentment has a possibility of going very quickly. My is the dilemma. The my. We used to do it here for years ago. Put money here. Put health here. Put sex here. Everyone, it would trigger some kind of meaning, yes? Maybe if your back hurts, you'd be thinking health is fucking important, whatever, yeah? All right, now I'm going to change the meaning of the word without changing the word at all. I'm not going to change any letter of the word. I'm going to change it completely. My money, my health, my sex, totally different. Yeah? I want all of you to have a lot of money. I don't want you to have any of my money. Same thing, same money, but totally different if it's seen as mine. That's it. That's the bondage. It's an activity. You weren't branded or tattooed. And you don't have alcoholism. Alcoholism has you. It has us. And we're outmatched. We need something to allow a power greater than it. Because that little dog is masquerading as a big dog. But when you introduce the big dog, it rolls fucking over. So the fourth column. So the fourth column, the way we did it was 4 columns, right? So you put the first people, places, things, principles that you're pissed off. Like in San Francisco, it was meter maids. They were fucking ticketing people all the fucking time, and it's the way they make money. So it was no, you know, they didn't have to freaking do it. It's how they made revenue. So, all right, so I resent whatever. And this, all right, let's say I resent Wendy. Yeah, my girlfriend. Why? She left me, okay? So that's column 1 and 2. So then I go to, right then I stop and I go, I look at Wendy and I say, perhaps Wendy's as ill as I am. Yeah? That's the point of forgiveness. Then I look at my agenda. What part of my agenda, based on instincts, right? Social, societal, right? Like self-esteem, pride, sex, material, and emotional security. And you, because the self is sitting on managing all that, yeah. And then you see how was all this affected by Wendy leaving? Well, it affected my pride because I thought I was a ladies' man, and now the ladies split. Yeah, so my self-esteem went down. My emotional sobriety, definitely. I had a lot of dependence on Wendy. Yes. My material security, yes, she was rich. You know, I put the Pinto in the garage using her BMW. I'm going to go back to the Pinto. So I'm fucking pissed off about that. Yeah? Sexual, yes, affected my sexual ambitions. And also I was sleeping with the maid, so I'm not fucking, it bothered me there. So my sexual ambitions, all right? So now I've done the third column. So I see how the managing of self, yes, concerning these instinctual drives is appearing. And then I go to the fourth column and ask myself those 4 simple questions. Yeah? But I use it then and now. So I say, where was I and am I being selfish? Because there's the idea you were selfish back then, but you're usually the parasite selfish right now. In other words, it's like has a fucking altar to that fucking thing. I'll never be the same after Wendy left you. Give me a fucking break. You know what I mean? Right. Jesus, stop the earth. I want to get off. You know, it's a little bit dramatic to me, really. So you know, I'm sorry, but really, I mean, nothing's ever going to work again. This is all the head. This is the disease. The disease is talking to you. You take a stance in a position that you didn't even make. It made it for you. And you'll fucking die to be right about its own fucking opinion. Yeah? Do you want to be happy or do you want to be fucking right and alone? Because you're going to be right and alone with the parasite, definitely. So, so you do the inventory, simple. Where was I? Am I being selfish? Was I being selfish, self-seeking? And frightened. I don't, inconsiderate and what you call it, the other one. I think they're just attributes of the first 2. Selfishness and self-centeredness, really. Or self-seeking. Yeah, so inconsiderate and dishonest. Those are just coming from the other 2. Yeah? So then you just take it, and if you do a nice amount of examples, you'll see a pattern. Yeah? And one of the things you'll see is, what does the self really take to be important? Because whatever it takes to be important, a lot of its manifestations are going to be around there. So if it's self-esteem, you'll see a lot of your fears and resentments and harms that you do to others and yourself because of your opinion about that is there. So you'll see whatever the selfing takes to be important, its minions surround that area. So I know a lot of women in where I live, and they'll surrender everything except the body image. And that's where all their fear is, all their fucking resentments, all this, yeah? Because if you're not willing to give it over, it's gonna fucking be a nest for the fucking parasite. It's gonna give a birth to a lot of its little minions, resentments, and you'll be calling them all your children. They're fucking orphans. Fucking let the orphans of alcoholism go. Fuck, it populates way too much already. So, all right, so do you want to keep going? Fear. Fear is so simple. He explains the fear completely, really. It says, why are you in so much fear today? It's a beautiful statement. Maybe I'm not saying exactly what Bill W. says, but why are you in so much fear today? He doesn't let us answer, or this would be a fucking marathon. 5 days of stories. It says, isn't it because, follow this, it's beautiful. So why are we in so much fear today? So if there seems to be fear right now, he's going to explain why. Why are you in so much fear today? Isn't it because self-reliance has failed you? Yeah? So if fear is the egg and reliance is the chicken, if you want to get rid of the future eggs, get rid of the chicken. Yes? So in the book, it's very clear, fear is an expression from self-reliance. Why? Because we're relying on a failed system. Yeah? We're relying, it's sort of like going on a trip and relying on a failed GPS. Yeah? It presents maps, but they don't take you where you want to go. They're like from 1960 or something. And it's basically saying, you know, oh, you're a fucking loser if you don't turn right here. You're never going to get there. They're going to hate you when you arrive. You know, it's like freaking... And the only reason why, because it sounds like you. It's the only reason why. If it was stainless, you'd turn it off. You would. You wouldn't put up with it. You wouldn't. You wouldn't let anyone speak to you like you let this speak to you. No fucking way. See, you can't see being free from it while you're identified as it. There's got to be a moment that you see it as a foreign installment. That's the only reason why I use the word parasitical movement, because I'm hoping it triggers an image in your head that you see it as other, because that's where the real freedom, the possibility of real freedom is seeing that the disease you're calling you is not you. Yeah, that's where the pause lingers. Yeah, that's where the pause becomes the dominant expression of actually what you really are. You're not a thing. Yeah. So, all right. So, the fear inventory is pretty simple. You take a look at the fears, and usually there's not even a second column because you don't know why you're in the fear. It's really because the selfing's managing your agenda, and it's afraid it's not going to be met. So there's no real apparent threat, but you're still in fear. Yeah? So the second column, you may not even put anything down, but you go to the same third columns. You ask, you know, what am I afraid of? Well, I'm afraid I'm going to lose face, I'm going to be destitute, whatever, all these things. And you see how it affects this thing, the agenda, and then you again ask yourself, well, were you selfish? Are you selfish? Usually self-seeking and frightened there, yes? So, all right, you do the same thing. Now you see the pattern of fear in one's life. And by seeing the manifestation of self, it points to self. Yes? And then you do the sexual instinct. And to me, the sexual thing was interesting because when I did the inventory, most of my acting out around sex had nothing to do with sex. It had to do with self-esteem. That was the way I convinced myself against all evidence that I was okay, is if a pretty woman would go horizontal with me. Yes? Now, it would have to be a new pretty woman pretty quickly. Because I'd see like a mole on her face or something, and she wouldn't be able to, and so basically I was going out to have sex actually to establish a modicum of self-esteem. It was slavery, really. It was a lot of fucking work. Yeah, yeah. So the sexual thing is a 4-column, but then they add a 5th column where you ask yourself, when you look at all the activity, and the sexual inventory isn't just about people you slept with. It's like, if I slept with a woman who had kids, I affected their kids. Yes, I affected her husband. Yeah. So you do the you do the inventory. I'm not giving it justice, but you see it, right? 4 column. And then the 5th is you ask yourself, what could I have done instead? So you want to build a new ideal for that kind of behavior. And if you're willing to follow through with it, the power, the grace will be there. And so I had to be, when I came in AA, my idea of women was very objective. My relation was with cocaine, and I got high on women. That's what I did. The women were the drug, and my relation was with the cocaine. Yeah. I took the women, but I was always on coke. Yeah. So I needed a complete overhaul, and a lot of women in my life were happily willing to give me opportunities for that, pointing out to me all my lovely blind spots and shit. But thank God they're not my lovely blind spots. So I was willing to listen and open up and be undone and then be redone. And where now I can actually receive and give love, which is coming from where I was, that's monumental, really monumental. So, all right, so the 5th step is when you share it with somebody, and hopefully the person will help you illuminate some of the patterns. And really, I recommend hearing 5th steps. They're really cool. It's really a sacred thing where you hold the space for someone to reveal their secrets. And I think a secret is a good thing to reveal. I always used it for the secrets that I was keeping since I was 11 years old. And when I said it, I swore I was never going to say it this lifetime. When I said it, the guy yawned and missed it, so I had to say it twice in like 30 seconds, a thing I was never going to say. And I swear, you know, once you release it from the vault, it really gets downsized, you know? You know what I mean? When it's under your fucking care, it grows huge. If you put it out there, so... yeah, I take the sponsoring is a whole new way of accessing the effects of the steps. Yeah, especially when you're new. All you need to do is have a little more time than the other person and maybe be a step or 2 ahead. Yeah. So, what was I? 5th step, yes? All right, so you do that. And what happened with me, it introduced me to 6 and 7, which is the most active steps as you get older in sobriety. 6 and 7 are the most active steps. And what happens is, I like to do it in meetings because I believe it's our alcoholism. So when you share about, quote unquote, your alcoholism, and if it triggers a feeling in me, I immediately go, hey, I'm entirely ready for this to be reconfigured. I don't like removed. I mean, I think it's just energy that's knotted up, so I just like it to be reconfigured, yeah? So I say, I'm entirely ready to have this reconfigured, and I ask that power to do it, yeah? So, and I find that the AA meeting's like a booster rocket, yeah? And you want to catch it while it's in the oven. You don't want it to be like a forensic unit, you know, going over, because it's dead, you know? It's best to catch those patterns of self-defeat while they're in the ready, like when the army's ready to march, so to speak, you know? And then you bring in the bigger army, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I used it quite a lot to this day. I actually did it last night at the other meeting. Because you're just listening and they go, hey, yeah, I recognize that. And then, hey, I'm entirely ready. Because there's never a point where this becomes a self-help program. You know what I mean? There's not like a 7-year review when your life is given over to your care. You know, it's basically being very clear and to the point where you're not even in the event what we call surrender. You're surrendered. You're very clear that you're not managerial quality, and it doesn't come up for review every 4 or 5 years. Yeah, you're giving back the steering wheel. No. So, all right. So 6 and 7 to me are really living. You can do it right now. Yeah. And get in the habit of it. If you catch it before it formulates, yeah, it's just energy. And if you let it get released into the hands of the higher power, it will use it to become beneficial to you and others. Yeah? Where the same energy, if given to the mental state, will be used to twist some fucking thing. Yes? Really. I've seen it. I've seen it in its factory. I've seen it. So 5, 6, and 7. So 8 is simply you write a list, and from the 4th step, but you also look at other things, because some shit I did that I owe amends to that they weren't surrounding a resentment or a fear. They were a basic fear, like trying to rob a store, but I had no resentment towards the owners. So I needed to make amends because I had taken something from them. Yeah. So 8 is just making the list, and how it worked for me was the ones I was never going to do. Yeah, the ones that I'd like to put off for a while, maybe like my lifetime, yeah. And then the ones I'll do now. Yeah, but it has nothing to do with my list, because as soon as I got to that point, life's shit I had been conveniently avoiding for years found me. I mean, at concerts, I saw a guy I owed money to, or I'd be driving, and I see a guy I owed money to, and I stop, and come on, I'm in the program, here's $50. But the fact is, and the one thing was perfect, I used to live in a place in North Beach in San Francisco, and in San Francisco, parking is a premium, very difficult to park. And they had a great meeting there every Thursday night. And I would try to look for a space, but there was this one street, and there was a place called Rossi Market, which I used to go in and steal every day. I used to have one of those long leather coats, and I'd take 2 16-ounce beers, put here and a steak here, and then I'd walk out. And that was, I had my food and my carbs, my carbohydrates, and then hopefully get some drugs. So I did this for months, never got caught. But every time I would bypass that street. I didn't want to go near the market. And finally I said, fuck it, I'm going to go in there. And I went in, asked one of the tellers, where's the manager? He says, upstairs. I go upstairs, and I say, listen, I used to live here. I stole a lot of stuff. I got $55. Here, I'll give it to you, and I'm in the program. It's always important to say you're in the program. And here you go. And I left there. And I never thought about Rossi's Market ever again. My solution to it was to avoid it at all fucking costs. The solution was make the amends, and there you go. And all that energy that had to keep it in place and hidden, all the security guards I had to pay to keep it there, was released, and it went into my living budget. Yes? So I could feel fucking alive now without having to shoot up cocaine. Yeah? So that's 8 and 9. And 9 to me was the most freeing step to me, personally, because I really showed up. And an amend isn't saying you're sorry. An amend is, hey, listen, I'm willing to say, I'm willing not to do to anyone else what I did with you. Yeah, I'm willing to grow towards that. And very, very powerful. So the 9th step, step 10, it says continue to take inventory, because the parasite is dormant. It's there though, and you better catch it. See, if you catch it by seeing its nose, it's better than catching it when it's fucking on top of you. Yeah. So you do the 10th step, because the fears and the resentments are manifestations of self. So you want to see the manifestations as they're coming into your life, so that the whole fucking thing doesn't come in. Yes? Because they're just feelers. Yeah? See, and as soon as you get 1, 4, 5, 20, it's on, It hits like a critical mass, and then you're really fucked. So, all right, so you keep taking inventory. And then an 11th step is you also take an inventory. And then it says to improve meditation and prayer, to improve our conscious contact. Now the point is to improve the conscious contact. And after a while, it doesn't have to be just through meditation and prayer. Yes? You can surf. You can hike. You can gaze. Once the contact becomes obvious, there's a lot of ways to improve it. They were just suggesting 2 things. Yeah? Prayer, meditation, and it could be tons of other things. Yeah? Because the point isn't to pray and meditate. The point is to improve the conscious contact. That's the point. The prayer meditation is the means, the end. The means can be different. The end is what you're looking towards. Because the conscious contact, the more conscious contact, the less unconscious contact you're having through the parasite. It's just that fucking simple. There's just you have an amount of interest and attention. Some of it has been taken over by the parasite. We like to have perhaps there's a better way, having it moved over to the fucking higher power. so it can really work wonders through your life. Not for you, but you may get some byproducts, but for us. Yeah? So step 11, and then step 12 is just the agenda of AA. Yeah? You've had a spiritual awakening, and now you're going to try to help other people achieve sobriety and practice these principles in all your affairs. And when you're young in AA, you can't practice your principles in all your affairs. Limit your affairs. Not forever, but just for now. Yeah? No, if you don't know the danger points in you, take somebody else's view of them. Someone who's been sober a while, a sponsor or somebody who can point out to you and say, listen, bro, it's not good for you to fucking go there. And maybe, just maybe, they have a better view of the situation than you do. Yeah? So step 12 is simply the agenda of AA. And you take it upon it, and it's progress, not perfection. And I believe recovery progresses just like the disease progresses. And I believe it can lead to what's described on page 84. You'll cease fighting everyone and anything. You'll be placed in a position of neutrality with no thought effort on your part. The problem will not exist for you, which is a fucking unbelievable solution. It's the best solution I have ever met in this world. All other solutions, you got to re-up, and fucking this solution will allow the problem not to seem to even exist for you. Fucking, that's unbelievable. And you know, it's so incredible AA does, because AA, it says it beautifully. You'll have a new freedom and a new happiness, not a fucking revamped, self-centered one, but a new one. And you'll have a new attitude and a new outlook. Yeah, a new one. Not a fucking, you know, rehabilitated, self-centered view, but no, a new view. Yeah? Now, it may have to go through self-centeredness, but it's not from self-centeredness. Yeah? Because self-centeredness is the lens, but that light isn't from self-centeredness. It will go through. Yes? And when you surrender to the higher power, just like the mental state is collating all the information that it's taking in and producing these effects, the higher power will take the same raw data of your life, but it will make something else out of it. It's unbelievable. It can make gold out of coal. She made something. I don't think it's gold. You see? The same shit going on, held by the mental state, will cause you to get to fuck it and drink. That same information will be put to good use for you and others if surrendered to the higher power. It's the same data, exact same data, but what collates it will make it so completely different. So. How do you rely on self? Thoughts. The problem resides in the mind. If your actions of sobriety are thought about, the problem is deciding what you're going to do with the solution. You need to allow habits to be formed, which are actions without thoughts. That's what the first year of sobriety is. The first year of sobriety is the most important year of sobriety because habits get set. Yeah? I do not think about, should I go to a meeting? I think about which one. Yes? I have an insurance policy that allows me to travel lighter through 30 fucking years of a lot of different events. Yeah, and a lot of different feelings, and a lot of different opinions up here, a lot of different narrations of what's happening. Yet I have never veered off of sobriety for 30 fucking years because I'm guided not by my head, but by spirit. And I'm not unique. It's available at all times, right where you are, with no requirement necessary. You are what you're looking for, but not as what's looking. You are, as St. Francis says, what's looking is what you're looking for. The expression of conscious contact is coming from us. We are that spirit which is seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, and touching with no thought or effort. Do you sweat after a day of seeing? You know, I've seen so much. No? You know, when you wake up in the morning, does it like, oh, you wake up and then it takes 40 minutes for the whole thing to download? No, you're like fucking whole thing right here. Yeah. Any sound I hear, I didn't want to hear that sound, but you heard it first. I don't want to see birds, but you saw the bird. There's no volition, and that's the base of all of us, is conscious contact. We're all we all meet at seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching. And of course, so there's no thought or effort in being what you are. There's tons of thought and effort in being what you're not. This is the easier, softer way, completely. You know, I've never had a strong thought about drinking using it. Can you imagine if you got elevated to gold status that you'd want to keep fucking hanging out in iron status? This is what AA does. The spiritual high, you can't be pulled over for. You don't have to kiss people's asses to get it. You don't have to spend money for it. It's available at all times right where you are with no requirement necessary, and no one can take it away from you. It's freely given and freely received. Yes, yeah. So, any questions tonight? No? Stunned into silence. Wow. Well,